So the task has fallen to me to try and sum up the past 24 hours, the past 2 days. That's impossible to do. We've heard so much inspiring stuff. We've heard so many new facts. We've met so many wonderful people. And we've had so many great conversations. And part of me, having invested a lot of time over the past year planning this conference, feels almost a sense of sadness. God, after tonight, it's all over. It can't be all over. It absolutely cannot be all over. It's hard to take everything in. I'm sure at this stage in the day, you're completely, if not bamboozled by everything you've heard. You're finding it hard to continue to absorb more. And the good news is that everything you've heard, everything you've seen, will be up on our website in the next couple of days. The interactive programme that many of you have logged into will be still there, and we'll keep adding to it. We have everything recorded so that you can study it. We'll be making products about everything, so it can't end. For sure, the past 24 hours has not been long enough. The conversations that we've started, the journey we've embarked on, has to continue. We owe it to each other, we owe it to our planet, we owe it to our children, and we owe it to the future generations to take this on. 3 thoughts come to mind as we come to close to the end of these 2 days. Firstly, that everything is connected. Pope Francis has this as a central, powerful message that runs through the entire encyclical. We are connected. We are connected to our planet, yet our blindness, our individualism, our foolishness, our distraction has prevented us from seeing this clearly. As Phil Kingston said this morning, and it just blew me away, this comment, from Future Generations. How could you conceive of an economic system based on limitless growth on a finite planet? The wisdom of men. We, first and foremost, need to reconnect, to discover that interconnectedness of everything. The whole is more than the sum of the parts. To do that, we need to take time. And time is something we have very little of. But we need to take time. We need to slow down. We need to concentrate, to observe, to become full of wisdom again. Almost to go out of this building and to see the world around us with new eyes. Almost like through the eyes of a child. In fact, maybe you could think of a child, perhaps one that's unborn, or one that's just been born, maybe your grandchildren, and think of the world through their eyes. We also need to recognise that every struggle now, every struggle for social justice, for saving anything that's good, is inextricably linked to the struggle for climate justice. It's the big struggle. So we need to own each other's struggles. The whole is bigger than the sum of the parts. If I'm fighting for human rights, I'm for climate justice. If I'm fighting for the homeless, I'm for climate justice. If I'm fighting for gender equality, I'm for climate justice. And this is the reason why Trocaire took on this fight almost 10 years ago, at a time when people were a bit confused. Why would Trocaire, which was fighting for poverty, against poverty and for human rights, get involved in an environmental issue? The second point is that we are all connected. Right from the start of this conference, when Mary Robinson stood up, she reminded us of our interconnectedness to the planet and to each other. That our diversity is our strength. But we need to rediscover that sense of interconnectedness. We need to rebuild the sense of Mihil, Ubuntu, which, let's face it, has been broken by the consumer culture that we live in and we breathe every day. A culture that often denies the very existence of objective morality, especially in public life. We need to bring this spirit, not only in our local communities, but urgently into global political systems. If the dominant force in global politics is self-interest, where financial interests are allowed to dominate, we need to embed a new spirit of politics, of mehel, of fraternity. In essence, as Pope Francis says, if we have one common home, we need to become one tribe, one species, one family. And this requires a new ethic, a new culture, a new style of education. It's one that's an ancient one, but one that's also very modern, and was summarised very nicely yesterday when Andrew stood up and told us how he lives by Scout law. So we urgently need this new political leadership, which embeds the principle of the common good, and we have to build that here in Ireland. The third point is that we need to move forward and change the zeitgeist together. Nobody else in Ireland is going to do that if we don't take up the challenge. For we're the ones that responded to the call to come to these 2 days and to engage in a debate around climate justice. We, here in this room, can take the responsibility. At this conference, we have representatives of a huge cross-section of Irish society, with all the main cultural institutions represented in one way or another here in this room. We have the capacity to make the change. So how do we create that sense of interconnectedness, the whole being bigger than the sum of the parts? We have the tools, we have many of the policy prescriptions, we have many proposals, we have pathways, we've outlined some of them. We need to change the zeitgeist. We need to make sure that our differences, let's face it, the concern for our own brands, our own organisations, don't become our enemy and don't drive us apart. We need to own each other's struggles and get behind wherever the energy is. So if the energy is behind 350.org, let's own their campaign and get behind it. If it's behind the People's Climate, if it's behind Trocaire, let's get organised and let's get behind wherever the energy is. We need to support each other because vested interests are huge, as Bill McKibben reminded us. We need to share our successes. 2015 is a very important year, as the Ambassador has already said, and we can all take political action now. We need to raise the awareness in every avenue we can. We could all write a blog today. That's 300 blogs. We could all write to the Irish Times or any other newspaper. We could write to our local TD, and better, we could arrange to meet them. The 4th of July, and there's many practical things we can do. On the 4th of July, together with Stop Climate Chaos, we'll be organising a photo stunt to highlight the issue of climate injustice on Sandymount Strand, and you can join us there. In September, to coincide with the large concert, the Live Earth concert, we're going to be organising an event here in Dublin to highlight climate change through music. You can join us. On the 28th of November, all over the world, together with the People's Climate March, there's going to be marches ahead of the COP in Paris. Why don't we aim to be there, to create a march here in Dublin, or maybe all over the country, and bring the people in all the institutions we represent? And this is just the beginning. What about next year? Because it doesn't end in Paris. My dream is that we would be back here in Maynooth next year. That we can't have this as the end. We have to make this the beginning. And this institution, and Trocaire, and St. Patrick's College, why don't we make a date? Come back here. But we come back to report on progress. Not to listen to all the fancy talks on the stage, but to report on the progress we've made. I want to end where we began yesterday, with that beautiful poem of Elise, Our Mistake. Splendid trees sway in a tropical breeze. Birds like rainbows squawk their warnings. High on branches, gathering like a flower garden, their noisy beaks talk of global warming. Burnt grass lines the crusty fields. Wrens and robins seek out hedgerows, sheltering from the sweltering heat. One by one, drop the weakened crows. Oil spills, leaving layers on the ocean. A cormorant's wing, no use anymore. His ebony feathers, blue and green, as he slowly drifts away on the disgraced shore. Thank you.